opportunity to introduce our chief guest for today, Shri Salman Khurshid ji. Shri Salman Khurshid was born on January 1st, 1953 in the city of Aligarh, Uttar Pradesh. Aligarh is close to Farrukhabad, his constituency, and even today, he has a strong political clout in both these cities. He is exceedingly well read and holds several degrees. He completed his graduation from University of Delhi, before which he was a student of St. Xavier's High School in Patna, Bihar. After completing his graduation from University of Delhi, he went to England for his higher studies. He pursued a course in law from the prestigious Sir Edmund Hall, Oxford University. Before this, writer-politician started his career in politics. He was a lecturer in law at the renowned Trinity College, Oxford. His father, who was a politician, and a maternal grandfather, who was the President of India. Politics has been in his blood for a long time. After teaching law at Trinity College, he returned to India and joined the Prime Minister's office as an officer on special duty. Shri Khurshid ji is blessed with an incredible political lineage which could have been easily catapulted him to the foot and the top of the political hierarchy. It was only in the 1991 that he contested his first Lok Sabha election and was elected as representative from the Farrukhabad constituency in UP. He is a famous politician who has been active in Indian political arena for almost 3 decades. He was the Union Cabinet Minister of External Affairs. He is not only a politician but also a writer, educationist, and moreover the senior most and a well-reputed lawyer. He has often argued cases in the Supreme Court on the behalf of the Indian government. He is a famous politician who has been active in the political arena and who has also been in the Congress since the time Indira Gandhi was in power. He was the Union Deputy Minister of Commerce and the Union Minister of State for External Affairs before he finally ascended to his current position. His book, Beyond Terrorism, New Hope for Kashmir, is a poignant tale that has received many rave reviews. Shri Salman Khurshid has been deeply involved in writing and acting in plays since his student days in Delhi and in Oxford. He is author of the play of Sons of Babur, published by Rupa and Company, which has been staged by Tom Alter in the lead role at the Red Fort in New Delhi. He has also been the editor of the contemporary conservative selected writings of Dhairendra Bhagat during the 1990s. It's an honor to have among us, sir. Without being any more hindrance between Salman sir and my dear students, I'd invite him to address the gathering.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and good morning to all of you. It's a unique pleasure and delight that I'm here in the presence of your marvelous Chancellor, Mr. Hari Mohan Gupta, who has been a friend for a very long time. It makes me a bit nostalgic. The first steps that he took, I believe, in education and imparting education, establishing the first school, a beautiful building of that first school, and I traveled all the way from Delhi for the inauguration of that school. Then I came again for the foundation stone ceremony of the school in Indore. And I was saying to Mr. Abhishek that he must have been a little toddler. So my coming back here is like, is a true nostalgic moment, because what it does is it tells me how the years have gone by, and not too badly to have a young man like that amongst you, and to have the Chancellor amongst you, I believe, is an indication of how the years have gone. Can't say the same for myself, but yeah, I will let you judge as we move along. Mr. Vice Chancellor, Mr. Dean, also the person who was responsible for getting me here, Mr. Yugen Srivastav, who was very persuasive on the phone and would not take no for an answer. Perhaps the capacity and ability that he learned from you, Mr. Chancellor. And then, of course, all you wonderful people, members of faculty, and this remarkable day, the first day for young students, young lawyers, as we used to call them when I was at Oxford. You were not called students of law, you were called young lawyers, and that's how I would address you. this is truly a wonderful moment, and hopefully a moment that you would remember as you go up in life and you finish your studies, become lawyers, and do some wonderful work for the country. Serve the country and serve your families, friends, and the people of our country. You would perhaps remember this day as an important day, as a day when you took your first step in the field of law, in the field of justice. And I hope that you will not remember this as a day when a very boring speaker came and bored you to death and started your career on boredom. So I shall try very hard after that somewhat exaggerated expression of my biodata to make this into perhaps a pleasurable and enjoyable afternoon. Whenever I have to speak to a crowd like yours, young people, full of energy, aspirations, visions, dreams, and as the Chancellor told me as we were walking here, people who still haven't discovered that there is a word called impossible in the dictionary of our times. And that's wonderful for people who don't know what impossible is. Of course, life will teach you what is possible and life will teach you what is impossible. But to begin with, not believing in the impossible is a wonderful thing. And so when I come across remarkable young minds, people like you, I wonder where should I start? And I wonder to myself if just speaking and saying the usual things and pontificating and blessing people is good enough, or should there be something more? And then I search in my mind as to, are there any things that I remember from my past? Are there any things that I remember from my readings, my travels? And suddenly I came across an interesting anecdote, and I thought I must share it with you to make this into a little bit of fun. And that anecdote is about a remarkable man called Mullah Nasruddin. I don't know if you've heard of him. He was on television some years ago, a serial on the life of Mullah Nasruddin. He's from Central Asia, and when I traveled to Uzbekistan, I found in the heart of Central Asia in one place where there's a huge statue of Mullah Nasruddin on a donkey. And he's always traveled on a donkey, and there are many tales about the donkey as well. Well, Mullah Nasruddin one day came to a gathering such as this one and hadn't really prepared himself very well. And he was asked to speak. And he was a little bit nervous, worried about whether what he said would be appreciated or not. So he looked at everyone very seriously, at the audience, and said, "Well, ladies and gentlemen, do you know what I'm going to say?" And everybody said, "No, we are waiting, we don't know." He said, "It's my practice not to speak to people who don't know what I'm going to say." And he walked away. And he left. Now there was somebody very persuasive like your Chancellor who said, "We can't let him do this to us. Call him back next week. Give him any excuse, but call him back." So Mullah Nasruddin was dragged back to the auditorium, and everybody sat there. And they'd obviously had the experience of previous week, and he got up, still ill-prepared, and he said, "So now you know what I'm going to say." And everybody cheerfully said, "Of course we know what you're going to say." And he said, "Well, then I need not say it at all." And off he went. So everybody got a little bit upset, and the Chancellor said, "Bring him back a third time. Can't let him escape. And I'll tell you what, half of you say, I know, the half of you say you don't. And then he will force them to speak." So he came again. This time a little bit relaxed because he thought this is an easy audience to handle. And he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, do you know what I'm going to say?" Half of them said cheerfully, "Yes, we do." The other half said, "We don't." So they thought they'd caught him. And he paused a while and said, "Very good. Then those who know will please tell those who don't, my job is done." Now, I say this to you because this is what lawyering is about. Lawyering is about being able to use your wits, being able to use whatever material you have, the capacity of the person whom you are addressing, the judge normally, a jury if you were in a different system, and to be able to make a point and get away from the courtroom with something that you came to seek, which is relief in your matter, on the facts of the case that you are presenting to the judge. And what you need to do is to be able to have confidence in yourself. And by the way, even if you're not well prepared, must have confidence, but it's good if you go prepared, because then you're less likely to be tripped up. And go with confidence, have the capacity, ability to communicate, make sure that the other person is put a little bit towards feeling self-conscious, that I don't know whether this person knows more than I do, or does he know less than I do, and in that moment, you're able to get the relief that you're looking for. It's an interesting job. The role of a lawyer is an interesting, very interesting job, and it's essentially about human persuasion. How do you persuade human beings? You persuade human beings by first knowing what they like, what they dislike, by first discovering the manner in which they want a story to be told or facts to be presented. By knowing exactly what their past reactions have been and how they would react in given circumstances and situations. And then finally, having confidence in yourself that you can make people change their mind. Whenever you stand up before a judge, quite often you would find that the judge has some basic perception about what you are presenting to him or her. But it is your challenge to change that. If the judge agrees with everything you say, it's no fun. If the judge disagrees and you then are able to persuade the judge to change his or her mind, that's when you make yourself a good lawyer. Now, when I was reading law myself, we had some very, very, very interesting people teach us law. And I give you the example of one of the finest judges the world has known. His name was Lord Denning. And when you begin to read subjects, particularly when you begin to read administrative law and constitutional law, and you look at judgments in administrative law, Lord Reed, Lord Diplock, Lord Denning, from English cases on which many of our Supreme Court judges have then built a remarkable jurisprudence of Article 14, Article 16, Article 21, which is non-discrimination, reasonableness, rationality, taking decisions with an open mind, taking into account all relevant factors and not any extraneous factors, etc. There's a huge and vast jurisprudence that our courts have developed. But essentially, many of these ideas were handed down to us because we follow the common law system, the same system that UK has. We've developed it further. In some cases, UK has developed it further. But there is compatibility and similarity and an echo of one in the other. More of the British in our system, less of ours in their system, because our law reports have been made available to the rest of the world in recent times when soft copies have been made available. Otherwise, it was difficult to carry these huge books from country to country to say that India is doing this as far as its courts are concerned. Now, Denning, and that's another thing that you will learn as to how judges think. There was a very famous case, and when you go through your case laws, it's an administrative law matter. You can find it somewhere. It's called Gouriet, G-O-U-R-I-E-T, Gouriet versus Post Office Workers Union or something of that kind. This is a famous case that goes back to the time when I was a student. You remember there was apartheid in South Africa, which meant that blacks and whites were treated separately and discriminately. And therefore, the Labour government and the Labour movement in United Kingdom was thoroughly opposed to the then government of South Africa, as indeed we were opposed to that government. And that's the government that had arrested and put in captivity for 27 years a very great man who followed in the footsteps of Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, who really is a most remarkable man that I've ever known or ever met. Now that government, which was seen as a very perverse government by many people who thought about human rights, is a government that the labor movement in the United Kingdom wanted to boycott. And they wanted to boycott that government by saying that they would not, this is the Post Office Workers Union, by boycotting mail going to South Africa. So they said, we will, if South Africa is unwilling to change its attitude towards apartheid, we will not deliver mail to South Africa. Now those were days where we didn't have internet, we didn't have emails. So everything had to go by what's called snail mail now. People even forgetting what it was called. And there was this threat, and they said, we will not deliver mail to South Africa. We'll cut South Africa off. So financial transactions, sending of bank drafts, of checks, of any other document, reliable, important instruments, etc., nothing would go to South Africa because of this boycott. Now this matter was being heard by what was then, before the reform, the Queen's Bench Division in the UK courts. And the Queen's Bench decision heard it. There was a technical issue involved. When you do the PIL, public interest litigation issues here in India, you'd find that the locus standi has been broadened by Indian courts so vastly that any person can stand up and say, I want to fight this in a public interest. I want to fight this as a public cause, although I'm not necessarily personally affected, but I will fight this in a public cause. This could not have been done in England at that time. So what you had to do is, you had to go to the Attorney General and persuade the Attorney General to allow you to file something akin to the public interest litigation here in this country, and it was called a relator action. So it would be, the Attorney General would be, in a sense, party to the cause that you were raising before the court. Now, what happened is that the person who wanted to challenge the Labour Party's threat of boycott, who was a conservative and obviously sympathetic to South African government, asked for the Attorney General to give him permission to file a case. And the Attorney General, being a Labourite, part of the Labour government, refused. So the Queen's Bench Division said, but frankly, if the Attorney General doesn't give you permission, there is nothing we can do. This is on a Friday. This is on a Friday at 4 o'clock. We were told, very eagerly watching in Oxford what was happening in London, we were told that Lord Denning, who was sitting in the Court of Appeal, which was the next step before the House of Lords, decided, and he told his brother judges, we are not going to get up early to go home. Let's just hang on for a while. And they couldn't understand why he wanted to stay late in the afternoon. He was waiting for the appeal to come from the relator action. And finally the appeal came, and 3 judges heard the appeal. Lord Denning said, I will grant an absolute stay against the boycott. The other 2 judges said, we agree with Lord Denning, but we will confirm the stay only after we have heard the Attorney General. And that's where the matter rested. Next morning, it was reported in the papers. There's a huge furor. Everybody was screaming, shouting. Parliament said the Attorney General must come and tell us what has happened. So Attorney General was to go back to Parliament, and he went to Parliament on Monday morning, and he told Parliament, there is no need to be worried. There were 3 judges there. There's only 1 judge who was against me, the other 2 are in my favor. I only have to go and explain to them why I have refused to help this man who wants stay on the boycott. And then, of course, the matter was to go forward. That evening, at a dinner in the Inns of Court, some of us went up to Lord Denning and said, have you, Lord Denning, heard what the Attorney General said today? And he said, what did he say? So we said, well, he said to Parliament that only 1 judge is against me and the other 2 are in my favor, and there is no reason why we should be worried about what the final verdict will be. Would you like to say something? And he doesn't normally, and judges, you know, that normally don't speak about cases that are before them. But this was in a closed door meeting inside the Inns of Court. It's like a close family gathering only of barristers and trainee barristers of the Inns of Court. So Lord Denning was tempted and he couldn't resist, and he said, "This Attorney General doesn't understand cricket, does he? I have bowled him middle stump and he says he's not out because the other two are standing." Now that is the way a judge looks at what he is doing. The impact of what you have said, done or pronounced in court. And you have to pick this up quickly to see how you can knock down the other two wickets as well. That's what law really is all about. But law is about these tricks, how you persuade, how you argue, how you make a point, how you collect information, and you will be taught all this here. You will be taught, I've seen, you have a marvelous moot court available here. You will be doing moot competitions. You will be writing tutorials. You will be arguing amongst yourselves. You will be hearing lectures. You will be preparing essays, etc., etc., and all this you will learn. But one important thing that the Vice Chancellor said today, and I think I must acknowledge that and applaud that, and that's the distinction the Vice Chancellor made about living beings who come in the category of human beings and those who come in the category only of animals. Now, animals are not all bad things. Some animals are beautiful. Those of you who love cats and dogs as I do would know that selflessly animals give you affection, animals give you companionship, animals give you support, and anything you ask them to give, they give to you. But what animals do not have that human beings have or should have, as the Honorable Vice Chancellor said, is the distinction of knowing what is just. An animal knows what's fun. An animal knows what is love. An animal knows what is to get. But an animal doesn't know what is just. Maybe we don't know enough about animals. Perhaps you feed one dog a biscuit and don't give it to the other dog. Sometimes the dog throws a tantrum. But it may be instinctive. It may just be natural, automatic, natural behavior. Or it may be because the animal also has a sense of justice and feels that the sense of justice has been betrayed. We haven't done enough studied psychology of animals. Some people may have, but I certainly am not aware that animals have this. And I think clearly human beings, the distinction between animals and human beings is that human beings have a sense of justice. I say that as a general proposition because there are some human beings who don't have a sense of justice, and those who don't have a sense of justice, we often, I think wrongly, call animals. When we say that guy is an animal, because he has no sense of justice. Now, I see no reason why we should be insulting animals by calling a person an animal, but that's another matter. But that's quite another matter. But there's another interesting thing that you must think about, that animals do not have that we have. Now, you're sitting here and you're hopefully enjoying this lecture. Now, you're enjoying this lecture, and this is what may be called your present happiness. If you're really happy with this lecture, then that's your present happiness. But you also have a future happiness. You also want to know, I hope tomorrow's lecture is just as good. Or I hope at the end of this lecture, and I hope this lecture finishes soon, we are going to have a good meal. We'll go and have a good lunch. And that's your future happiness. If I have a lunch tomorrow, if I have a lunch later, that's future happiness. Now, animals have present happiness. Every time a dog licks you and wags its tail and jumps on you, etc., it's the present happiness. But an animal does not have future happiness. Animals given food, it enjoys it. That's present happiness. But it has no plans of happiness for the future. This is another major difference between human beings and animals. That animals have no plan for future. A bird instinctively builds a nest and lays an egg and then looks after the chicks that are born. But a bird is not like a young person who says, I've finished my law degree, I will then go into practice, and when I make money, I will buy myself a car, and when I buy myself a car, I will save some money and build myself a house, and when I have a house, I will bring my old mother to come and stay in that house. That's all about your future happiness. And if it doesn't happen, of course it breaks you. Of course it's very shattering. Of course it's very disappointing. But it's all about the future. The animal only has present happiness, no future happiness. And there is a philosophical conclusion that is drawn from this. The philosophical conclusion, which is not too happy a conclusion, but it's a conclusion that answers the argument of some vegetarians that by killing somebody, i.e. an animal, you're actually killing somebody's happiness. What philosophers have said is, you can replace one happy animal with another happy animal. Because all you're replacing is present happiness with another present happiness. But you can't replace a human being with another human being, because the present happiness of a human being you can replace with the present happiness of another human being. But the future happiness of one human being cannot be replaced by the future happiness of another human being, because that's completely different. And that is how you make a distinction between man and animal. Now, why am I saying this? I'm saying this because this is the training that you will go through. This is how you sharpen your skills and you sharpen your way of thinking about how a lawyer talks. This is not the way ordinary people talk in the streets, I imagine. I mean, if you're on a bus and you start making this conversation to the guy, he will think you're going balmy, and they will take 2 steps away saying this person has gone crazy. I think you should be in some other place, not here. But when you're in a classroom, when you're in a conference room, when you're in a gathering of lawyers, of young lawyers like you, these are the things that you will be constantly asking yourself. I'll give you another example. This is a thalidomide case. Again, you can find the case. This happened again when I was a student. There was a situation in which some doctors had prescribed for expectant mothers a particular drug. That drug had adverse impact on the fetus, and therefore the children who were born or would be born were badly affected, and they were virtually mongoloid children that were born because of the adverse impact of the drug called thalidomide. The parents filed cases for damages on behalf of those children. That because of these drugs that were given to our parents, on our mothers, we have suffered this disability. And therefore, the manufacturers of thalidomide should give us damages. What was the defense? What was the defense that was given? The defense that was given is that this warning, this adverse impact on the children, was given to your mothers. And your mothers had the option of abortion. But they chose not to have an abortion. If they had accepted the advice given for an abortion, then you would not have been born with disabilities. So we are not at fault, your mothers are at fault. And the second argument, that if you were not born at all, would that be better than to be born with disabilities? Now, to be born with a disability is at least to be born. And not to be born at all cannot be better than to be born. Now, this argument was again placed before the court. I'm not going to tell you what the answer was, because I want you to go and find the answer. Because in finding the answer, you will be able to discover how courts handle these issues. Now, this is about law. Let's do a little bit about life now. You are going to be the citizens of our country, responsible for the conduct of governance in this country tomorrow, in whichever capacity, whether You join the private sector, you join the government, you become politicians, you become administrators, you become lawyers, you become judges, you become you become managers, etc. No matter which field you're in, you would in some way or the other be responsible for the country and also be responsible for your society, for our society. You will be the leaders of tomorrow. So the lamp that we light here today is a lamp in acknowledgement of the goddess of knowledge. This is a lamp that seeks blessings upon all of us of good fortune, of knowledge, of a good life, But there is another lamp, and that's the lamp that we will have to pick up and hand over to you. That will be the torch, the flame that you will carry then through life in good time to give it to someone else when you become elderly and another generation comes and takes over. And that torch you will have to pass. And I recall and remember the words of none other than President John F. Kennedy, that today the torch has passed to a new generation of Americans. Every moment, every day, there's a torch passing from one generation to another generation. And this is the torch that your society and your nation gives to you. The torch that will light the lives of those who may not have a torch of their own, who may have darkness in their lives, who may not have the good fortune of the blessings that you've had, both of your chancellor, your faculty, your university, to which, with great effort and aspiration, you have secured a position where you will now nurture yourself further and you will learn further, acquire knowledge and go beyond. There may be many people who don't have this good fortune. Our society, our governments, our structures are working to find equity and equality for everyone, equal opportunity for everyone, but the fact remains that it is not yet available to everybody. And there will be people who will not have the good fortune to come to a university like yours and to then get opportunities to do things in life. And you must pause and think of them at every step that you take. That there will be somebody who's lagging behind. There is somebody who never had the strength, never had the capacity, never had the energy, never had the food, never had the education, never had the light in their homes so that they could walk shoulder to shoulder with you. And you may have to pause to let them catch up with you. You may have to step back a little to hold their hand and bring them forward. You may have to pause to nurse them. You may have to pause to teach them. You may have to pause to help them. And yet ensure that you don't lose the race, because there is a race which you have to run, a race to reach the destination. And that destination is what beckons you from this very first step that you take on this beautiful day, your first day at university. And that's the larger responsibility. That's the responsibility about not being a good lawyer. That we've already talked about. That is the responsibility about being a good human being. If you're not a good human being, then being a good anything doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, you are essentially a human being. You would be a lawyer and a human being. You would be a doctor and a human being. You would be a mother and a human being. You would be a sister and a human being. You would be a brother and a human being. But the human being will be common. And human being is one word and human is the other word. To have humanity, to be human, to be concerned, to be compassionate, to be honest, to be caring, to be helpful. These are the things that make you a good human being. And what India today needs, and I say this with no fear of contradiction, is not so much a military might, not so much to manufacture things, not so much to create jobs, not so much to put up big institutions, not so much to make things in the market, but what India needs the most is to be human. Because the strength of India in the world, the strength of India in the world is its humanity. We don't have half the strength of China when it comes to military prowess. We don't have half the strength of China when it comes to economic prowess. We don't have half the capacity of the United States of America when it comes to work done in the universities. We don't have half the strength and beauty and capacity of Europe when it comes to the opportunities that Europe offers for enterprise, and it offers for entertainment. But there's one thing that we have that nobody has, and that's called India's soft power. What we have is spirituality. What we have is the ability to reach happiness. And if India is not a happy nation, if we are not a happy nation, then we are nothing. And I leave to you my favorite book that I was first introduced to when I was perhaps not even your age. I was younger than you. If you go onto the Google, you'll find it. It's a book that you can read in exactly half an hour, 40 minutes. Small book. It's called The Little Prince. It's also a movie. It's a little prince. The little prince travels the globe and sees everything, makes friends, makes a friend of a fox, of a snake, sees people who can hold stars in their hands, goes and looks at a vast garden of roses and various other plants. But there is one special rose that he has left on his own planet that he cares about. One little rose that matters and that makes the difference. In your life, look for that little rose. Read the book, look for that little rose, and know that that rose matters more than anything else in the world. Look after that rose and you will be a successful human being. Thank you very much.